I'm excited to do this today. You know, a lot of times we talk about things that really relate to investor-owned utilities, and sometimes because co-ops are a little bit forgotten about this, and there's a lot of similarities. In this particular case, I think it's going to be interesting to talk to folks who are in that co-op space, and I think you can glean some insight from them on how they view innovation. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the increased demand. We're going to talk about how you minimize disruptions, the same thing that the other utilities have to deal with. But we also want to talk about this in light of the managing of climate risk. So with that, I'll go ahead and introduce. Thank you for the introduction of me. And I'd like to just go through the introduction for the others. So Jacob, we have Jacob Barlow here. He's the Vice President of Operations and Engineering at Randolph EMC. Anything else you want to add to that?
We're just in central North Carolina. We serve about 32,000 members. So.
Very good, thank you. We also have Don Bowman. Don is VP of Engineering and Operations, and he's also the Assistant General Manager at Wake EMC. Anything else to add?
Yeah, so we're just northeast of Raleigh, and you might remember there's a song called Wagon Wheel, and you're heading down south in the land of the pines. What they left out is that it's 100 to 120 foot pines and 30 foot right of ways, so you know our challenges are all based around that.
Very good, thank you so much. OJ, we have OJ Johnson. He's a construction and right-of-way supervisor at Mitchell EMC, and has been a lineman, I learned, for many, many years. Anything else you want to add to that, OJ?
I'm from Mitchell EMC, which is a medium-sized co-op just northeast of Tallahassee. I'm one of those hard-headed linemen that were mentioned earlier. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate y'all inviting me to do this.
Thank you, OJ. And we also have Dragan, Savic, the Manager, Engineering, and at ENWIN Utilities, and that's in Canada.
In Canada. Yes. So
Ontario,
yeah,
right?
Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Yeah. We're right across from Detroit, Michigan.
Right.
So yeah, we have about 90,000 customers. We're focused on the city of Windsor, and that's our service territory. So
Very
excited
good.
to be here as well. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for having all of you here today. We'll just dive right on into it. So when we think about what we've seen in the news recently around hurricanes, and of course we've heard a personal testimony about what's happened to Jamaica, but we've seen the devastation in Florida from two major storms. So, you know, in light of that, what have you learned in terms of how you prepare for storms, in the way that you change your strategies and the, you know, taking into account the intensity? And I'll just say, you know, I was amazed when I watched these two storms come to Florida, how literally in a matter of 24 hours, one of them went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 in 24 hours, which was just amazing to me. So when you think about, you know, just how quickly now due to climate change, things can really ramp up, these storms can grow in size, you know, you're planning for that. How has that changed, these recent experiences? How have they affected the way that you prepare for storms? We'll start with you, John.
Okay. Well, so, you know, just with any storm, I mean, we all work at a utility or in the utility industry, and the storms, you never know how they're going to hit till they hit, right? I mean, that's the reality of every storm we deal with. And, you know, the joke is the more you prepare, the less likely it's going to hit you. So we always try to prepare a lot in advance of our storms, so that way it'll push west or push east, or, you know, it'll miss us.
Not east.
And, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, it's a balance, right? Like everything we do in life, it's a balance between, you know, if you bring in resources early to help during a storm, and then you don't have a storm, you don't, you know, then you're criticized for spending money that you didn't need to spend. And if you bring them in and you needed them, then you're the hero, right? You're like, oh, that guy had a lot of forethought, and he's doing a great job. So, you know, we're in a role where we have to try to balance, you know, being responsible with our members' money, because it's a limited resource like everything else, and being responsible with the, you know, resources we have in hand. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I think storms are only predictable in the sense as you can get some wind gust data, you can get some rainfall data, but I don't think when you saw what happened in the western part of North Carolina, the most of the forecasts simply said catastrophic rains. And I'm not sure anybody knew what catastrophic rains looked like until you saw mudslides and landslides taking down, the valleys through North Carolina. And I don't know if anybody, as you can attest, no one was prepared for that type. It's usually the western part of the state that is looking at ice storms and snowstorms, not the hurricanes. But it's old school still in the fact that we are preparing our guys, making sure their chainsaws are gassed up, making sure they've done all the work on their trucks are running, and then we station them where they go. But the data that's been most important, I think, is what we can find. Co-ops share a lot of data. Mm-hmm. So I was telling Jacob earlier that if the storm's coming from the west, I can look at how they're faring, right, and kind of get a sense, because when Hurricane Michael came through, and we've talked about Michael for you, we weren't expecting much. But when we saw that Randolph was getting hit a little bit harder, we did a little extra preparation. We had a couple hours to kind of gear up and change our mindset of what we were up against. So I think those type of data is going to be good. I think that we'll continue to get better at forecasting, and we look forward to it.
Very good. OJ?
The thing that I've seen in Michael was whenever we took the outage, we were 100% out, and that is a bad feeling, a bad position to be in. We were able to pull men and materials from all over the southeastern United States, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, the Carolinas. Material came from all up at the East Coast, some out of Canada, West Coast. What I've seen, especially during COVID, if we take a lesson from it, your supply chain really depends on not just what you have in the warehouse, but what you can get your hands on. With the weather events that we have, not only affect us in the southeast of the United States, but worldwide. What happens if you have materials, insulators made in Mexico or China or Europe somewhere, and you have to get them in, but you can't get them? That's a hard spot. Labor's also another hard spot. If you have people you're pulling in from other states that are close by, you have to go further out. They get more windshield time when they're driving in, and so you have to. It's a balance, like you were talking about a while ago. You plan for the worst, hope for the best, pray about it, and put your seatbelt on and deal with it. That's what you have to do, and. Some of the information I seen up here this morning on satellite imagery was like, wow. Part of the problems that we had during Michael was we're 100% out. So we're putting people in pickups, going out and looking at power lines to tell us what's going on. Well, what I seen earlier today, if you have an overflight of a satellite, you might be able to get that information 12, 15 hours, especially if they have everything on your system documented. So that is a lot. That's exciting right there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about that type of information that you can collect. Previously, utilities have taken a lot of time to either put drones up, which was a little bit more modern, right? But historically, and OJ, being a lineman for as long as you have, as soon as it's safe, you just start sending out scouts, right? And so this is a physical manpower process to really kind of get that going. So I think that's a really good example of how, the technology, the satellite imagery helps. So Dragan, and we are talking about this more in terms of hurricanes, but honestly, this conversation is really about weather events, right? So you want to share some of your experiences around that?
Yeah, like being in Windsor, Canada, we have no hurricanes yet. Right. Hopefully it stays that way, knock on wood, right? But even tornadoes, right? They've increased in frequency. That used to be extremely rare, and now we've had a few in the last 5-10 years. So for us, that's quite a bit more than normal. But we're in the state of where we have winter storms and summer storms. So for us, a winter storm, where it's all lines get ice, the tree branches get full of ice, and now they're heavy. The limbs fall on the lines, they break the poles, right? So we have that impact as well, and so we've been trying to see what's the best way to tackle that issue. And we basically, just like I'm sure other utilities, we do pole loading analysis to make sure our poles are capable of withstanding, as CSA recommends, 1 in 100-year storms, which we know frequency has changed, intensity has changed, and we've realized that in some highly loaded pull cases, we actually are close to that limit of what that pull should be loaded. So we went and proactively actually changed our pull classes to at least a size higher, right? So a class higher, to try to prevent the impact of these storms that we're noticing are happening much more in our service territory than we're used to. And we've also actually looking at our grid as a whole and doing a high capacity feeder. So meaning that we're connecting different stations through distribution feeders and being able to offload if one of those feeders or even that station gets taken out of service, that the operators are quickly through automated switches able to shift that load very quickly, which before you'd have to check the load, you'd have to do various pieces of obviously checks and balances, but now we've built a large scale trunk. We're still building it, it's still a couple years out of being fully complete, but this large scale trunk basically has, like I said, the high capacity where they know right away they can shift that additional load and get customers back online as soon as possible.
That's a very good point, and I think about, in 2024, you certainly think about before the pandemic, we had this thriving gig economy, right, in the US, and so people were very dependent on having reliable power. They needed it, and they needed it to be, just 100% reliable, right? And so now these big storms are coming in, and so every single minute matters, right? And so when I think about small businesses, right, just as an example, when I think about schools and hospitals, so for every hour, every 6 hours that they are not at full capacity, it has a significant impact on the communities. So I think the technology and being able to, it was a great example on using technology to be able to switch the, circuits to try to get people back on faster. All those things, every hour that you can save in restoration really has a huge impact to the communities we serve. Let's talk a little bit about the data and analytics, all right, for reliability. So we've talked a little bit about how the technology helps you in terms of storm preparation, but let's just talk about how you use that data to improve reliability and safety. Jacob, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of data analytics. I'm an electrical engineer by trade, but once somebody showed me how to access a SQL database, it was all over from there. So I love pulling data out. At Randolph, we're huge users of data. We try to use every single piece of data that we have in some useful way. And so, there's a lot of things that you can do. A lot of people get overwhelmed because, as utilities, we all know, we bring in a lot of data. And some people, well, we don't have a data analyst or we don't have somebody who knows how to do that. And I say start small. Just pick one thing that you want to change, whether check everybody's voltage, make sure it's within the ANSI band, or check transformer overloads or something like that. And if you start small, you can start to snowball from there, start to gain that skill set and grow your data analytics program internally. One of the things I love it, and linemen get a bad rap for not wanting to adopt new technology, but I don't see it. Every lineman I deal with, we say, hey, we got this new iPad, here's the map, you just punch in the meter number, it tells you where it's at. Especially the younger guys, they love it. I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to get accounting to do something different. It's a heck of a lot harder than trying to get a lineman to do something different, I can tell you that. And the linemen are just more likely to complain to you about it, whereas everybody else will be kind of, but a lineman will just tell you how it is. So, but anyway, one of the things that we started doing is we put in, like when we have a feeder lockout, we take that data from the relay, like real time, and we put it into our map system, and we put like an X marks the spot. This is the most likely spot that fault is on the system. Mm-hmm. And so now, when we first started doing it, we would call the lineman who's on call, and we'd say, hey, I got this fault data. Do you want it? And they're like, oh, I'm going to start at the station and write it out like I always do. And then we'd call the next one and the next one and the next one. We just stuck on them. And then finally, now today, the first thing they do is they're looking at the map trying to see, hey, the fault data's not in yet. Hey, where's that fault data at? Because now they can just drive to the most likely spot. So you got a 12-mile feeder, and you're giving them a 200 foot or 300 foot window of where that fault most likely is. if you don't think that has an impact on your reliability, if you don't think that has an impact on your safety, you're crazy.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. It's amazing how the linemen have adopted this technology. In fact, we have actually changed the position of system operator dispatch. We no longer have system operators in our mission control center anymore. We've typically hired more computer savvy people and less tenured people that know what a recloser and know what a regulator and know what a line span really looks like. What they are basically babysitting alarms. And then we've given all of the field data straight to the lineman. So a lot of times an alarm will go off and you could key that mic, and by the time you've keyed the mic, the lineman's saying, I see it, I'm on my way. They know what it is faster than the dispatchers do, and they know what they're going to look for. So those type of things really are making a big difference. And I think that if we're going to hit in a minute, I think more member communications, and I have more to say about reliability when it comes to member communications, but I'll pass it on.
Okay, we'll come back to that next. OJ?
One thing that I've seen, we've started the process of putting what we call triple singles, other people might call them Vipers, up and networking our system in between substations. So if you have one breaker lockout, it opens up, isolates the next one up, and then closes in and backfeeds your line. But on the fault finding, it also takes that outage down to where you can find it in a little bit. One section line we had, it took me 2 hours to ride it because you had to ride every tap. The sectionalizing wasn't there. But now we've invested money in reliability, putting up the triple singles, putting up sectionalizing, if you will, to protect against that. Also, too, the linemen get a notification on their cell phone via text that we've had an operation on this breaker. So let's go to the right-of-way side of it. On the OMS, when you plug in what caused the outage, it starts flagging it. Well, as a supervisor, if I'm sitting there looking at my telephone and text messages, and I keep seeing an operation on a circuit, I know that something's going on. Let's take a closer look at it. As a supervisor, I can get people out there to patrol that line to see what's going on. And with AiDASH, being able to take a picture of it and assign it, I think is a great benefit too.
Very good, thank you, OJ. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, for similar comments to us too, right? We're really leveraging that knowledge that the linemen have, right? We went from replacing assets based on a lineman coming to the engineering department saying, that one looked bad over there, make sure you replace it next year or tomorrow, to trying to introduce paper forms, right? Oh, linemen do a couple health index calculations and then write down the info, we'll do the health index calculation. To now we're using the technology, right, to really, they're out there inspecting the asset anyway. Give them the right tool, technology, an iPad, right? They put in all the information, we calculate the health index, and now it's on a replacement plan. Now the lineman feels empowered. They're dictating really where is that the worst spot in the city? What's the worst transformer? What's the worst pole? And they're seeing the results firsthand. So it's really being able to use technology to increase that reliability and show them that your input matters, right? And they see the results.
No, that's a great point. As one thing we know about linemen, and I'll say this about operations in general, they are very competitive, right? And so when you start showing numbers around, reliability, they want to win. They really want to hit those targets that you set. So it's very encouraging to hear that, and thank you for sharing your examples of that. I wanted to come back to you, Don, a little bit about, with this technology, how do you see this taking it to the next level on how that then impacts the customers? How do you, then with all this information, how do you take that to communicate with the customers or help you with just engaging with customers in a meaningful way?
So cooperatives have been around for 85 years, and we started a very traditional, where everybody was just grateful to have power. We make jokes that people used to tell us their power is out by mailing a letter to us to tell us their power was out. And obviously demographics have changed, expectations have changed, and they want to know as fast as we know exactly what we're up against, what they're up against. I get told I need to know if I need to put all my stuff in a cooler. I need to know if I need to go get a hotel room. I need to go, if I need to go get my mother-in-law and get her to some place that has power for her oxygen and that sort of thing. So and then our board of directors have started to notice that for the first time ever, cable companies, internet companies, telephone companies are getting better than we are at reporting this sort of thing. We're in the area, we're going to have it back on in 2 hours. And when our board saw that, they were like, no, we are going to be better than that. And so, I mean, so right now, I just had an annual meeting. I stood up in front of my annual meeting and I said, look, everybody, I don't know how long it's going to take sometimes. I don't know if a tool is going to break. I don't know if this, but I can tell you that my data tells me that 72% of all of our outages are restored within 2 hours. So I told my whole annual meeting, I said, so I'm going to put 2 hours. Anybody got a problem with that? Because that's the best data I had. But I've got to think that the near future is going to be a lot better than that. We obviously now have a long historical database for every asset on our system. We know exactly what happened the last 10 times that operation happened, what was the cost. So let's go ahead and make some assumptions. We also have GPS locations of all our trucks. We know what trucks have what tools. Surely AI is going to be very quick to take all that information, and the second we have an outage, go, you know, it's a 90% chance you'll have this back on in 45 minutes, because whenever that happens there, it's going to be a tree limb. And I would love to see that, you know, that work, you know, be accomplished, because I think our members would greatly appreciate us taking that next step and giving them better information during an outage. And they're ready for it. They're watching. They're downloading our apps. They're getting our text. They're commenting. I will tell you that I had one member call the other day, and I saw the notes that the CSR had taken, and the note said, I've been out 3 times this month, and the CSR keeps telling me it's because of a tree. Now, I know that's statistically impossible. And I'm like, I'm not so sure it's that impossible. Because of the areas they serve. But, you know, they want to know, and they want to know as much as we know.
Very good. Jacob?
Yeah, we've taken a lot of steps. Just like Don said, there's a lot of communication, a higher expectation of communication. So anytime we have what I would say a longer duration outage, anything expected to go over 2 hours, we make sure we put some kind of ETR on it. It's still our best guess. And we also, a lot of times we've been big on telling the linemen, you got to send pictures in. You all got phones, you all got iPads. As soon as you get to the scene, take a picture, send it in, and we'll get it posted up on social media. We'll get an email sent out to the affected members. So that's kind of what we do. So for larger outages or outages that are going to be a long time, we make sure during the outage, basically, we say, this is why your power's out. Here's the tree. Here's a picture of the crew working on the tree. And, you know, we feel like that takes away a lot of that anxiety around, do they know there's a problem? Are they working on it? What are they doing? And then after, you know, it was important, I think somebody said, how do you measure success on some stuff? And, you know, that's, you know, if you start putting like self-healing in, so we've got self-healing systems, and now all of a sudden the members are just seeing a blink, and they don't even know that the self-healing activated to restore their power automatically. So, you know, we're making it a point to tell them, hey, we invested this money in a self-healing grid that affects your location. That blink you saw today was that self-healing grid. We saved you, you know, a 2-hour outage, and yeah, your lights blinked one time, but you saved a 2-hour outage. And, you know, we just, a big milestone this last hurricane, we hit 1 million minutes of member minutes saved, outage minutes saved on our self-healing grid, you know, just by having it in. So 1 million minutes in about 3 years.
That's a great example of how the technology is helping you too.
But you got to
really
communicate it.
That's
yeah,
right.
You got to take credit for it. You know,
That's
you got to
right.
be your own promoter. You know.
And OJ will probably remind me of this, but you know, our linemen feel like their job is just get the power on as quickly as you can. And so when I stand in front of them and said, it's just as important that you give us good information early so that we can set those expectations. That's still a hard message for them to get. They get out of the truck and they get started. I'm like, take a moment, call in, make sure good notes are in dispatch, because those notes are what we're going to use to communicate in the event that this goes longer.
Very good point. OJ?
I'll have to piggyback on what everybody else says. Social media plays a major role in outage restoration, letting the consumer know what's going on, taking the sting out of the outage. Hey, I know what's going on. It should be on in a couple hours. But I want to kick it up to something else too on scheduled work. What we've noticed, used to we'd send out postcards for right away. But now we send out text messages letting people, the whole substation, know that we're going to have trimming operations going on or some herbicide spraying. That way, when they see somebody walking through their yard with a backpack on, they know, and they don't know who they are, they've actually seen a picture of them on Facebook or on the website, and it kind of makes them feel at ease too. So that's a plus too as far as technology goes in my view.
I think you raise a really good point about the social media. You know, we're talking about this in terms of collecting information and how you disseminate that information. And we do see more utilities now really embracing and hiring people that focus only on managing their social media, right? You used to have a communication person that just sort of covered everything, the press releases, the magazines, the newspapers, all of that stuff. And now we see a lot of companies hire someone, and that is their sole job, is really managing the content on their social media. And I think it's a great platform to get that information out. Good point. Dragan?
Yeah, same. Like we're basically doing that exactly, right? We have a communications coordinator, and they're their social media wizard, right? They're always posting, they're updating the information, notifying the customers, right? And we've really noticed it's the same as everybody has said. There's the demographic shift, but we're trying to really tailor some of the messaging to the various pieces, right? So we still hand deliver some notices. We have an app. We have the social media, right? You sort of have to encompass all of these pieces because some people still want that notification that there will be somebody in my yard this year trimming trees, right? And while others, obviously, if it's an outage, it needs to be relayed quickly. So use the social media and get that message out.
Yeah, and I think I've seen some other things like the neighborhood associations, emails even going out to community partners. And so I just think the more you can use these avenues to get the word out, I think the better. Very good discussion on that. So the next topic is probably the one that we probably lose the most sleep at night if you've managed anything around operations, and that's on the OpEx, it's the operational expenses, right? And so we all know that, with inflation, the cost of everything has gone up, right?
Yep. And
so we've also seen that we've lost a lot of talent. People like me are saying, I don't want to work 40 hours a week anymore. But seriously, you have people in the craft work, those skilled workers that are now in demand, and we don't see as many people going into that trade, right? And so there's a competition for that labor, which has driven up the cost for that. How is technology and what other information that you've gathered, how does that help you to manage in this world with rising costs and shrinking availability of resources? What have you done to sort of get a handle on those costs? And has technology helped you? And if so, what does that look like, Jake?
Yeah, I'll just give one quick example. This is a 50% cost savings. I guarantee it. It's on paper. I can prove it to you. If I have to replace a transformer on call after hours, I'm paying 50% more for that labor than I am doing it during the day on regular time. And so, one of the things that we went after is making sure we got a very good handle on our overloaded transformer. So we use data. We calculate every single day. Is that transformer overloaded? How many hours was it overloaded? What percentage overload it was? We have a whole ranking system, and we say, look, this transformer, yes, it's fine. We all know we can overload a transformer until you can't, right? I mean, at some point, it's going to give up the ghost and cause an outage. And then the member's mad, right? Because a transformer outage, that's not 30 minutes to knock a branch off. That's probably a 2-3 hour outage, depending on where the transformer is located and how accessible it is. But that's just an easy way of doing stuff like that. So you got to take every opportunity you can to use data to find problems before they become an outage and spend the money to replace it on overtime. We all know a lightning arrestor that is creating a bunch of partial discharge. It's in the process of failing, right? Partial discharge is the signature of failure. It's a matter of time. You will have to replace that lightning arrestor or insulator or whatever component it is that's emitting partial discharge. So why not identify it early and get it replaced on straight time? So that's just an example.
Yeah, it's a real concern. In fact, just to kind of give you a taste of it, we have 55,000 meters at Wake Electric. When I got to Wake Electric in 2010, the average kilowatt hour usage per home was about 1,460 kWh. The 2024 number is 1,080. So we've lost 30% kWh. Why? Houses are more efficient, appliances are more efficient, they're moving, everything about a home is more efficient. The only thing that's made this worse is that material cost to build to that home has gone up 3x. And so this is turning our, growth is no longer a friend of the utility without raising rates, and so that's been a big thing. So we have to rely on technology, and that's one thing about a cooperative. I'm not sure about Georgia or Canada, but we're not, Jake and I aren't even regulated by the commission. We're regulated by our board of directors. We set our own rates to do that. So a lot of times we're deploying technology and data out of necessity, not for any other reasons. We've got to be more efficient. So if it's SCADA, so that we know a breaker's open, or whether it's AMI, not for the meter reading, it's for all the other voltage, power quality, things like that. So we have to continue to use that. When you deploy technology, use all of the technology, because that's the only way to get your bang for your buck. Right?
Yeah, and I think you raise a good point about co-ops. So you do have this sort of nimbleness about you, right? When I think about the approval process through an investor-owned utility and all the hierarchy you have to go through to get a decision, you guys have it a lot more collapsed, right? Which means, but the onus is then on you to make sure that all of that information is correct, and that you go to them with a solid plan for that to be approved. Yeah. It's a very good point. OJ.
We still have to stand in front of our board and say we made a good decision, right?
That's right. OJ?
Pre-COVID, you could get anything you wanted near about it. When COVID came in, 10 kVA transformer went from $300 to $1,200. Reel of 350 quad underground went from $3,000 to $9,000. Lead times way out there. Some of them are a year for a transformer. Trying to mitigate the cost and find out where your problem areas are is a major concern. On the other side of it, managing your people. I was in a conversation last night with somebody, and they were talking about T&M maintenance. I don't like T&M side trimming. You got too much money you put out there, and you don't really get the bang for your buck. If you have somebody who has got contracts to do the bid work, you know how much it's going to cost up front. So part of the cost savings of that is being able to manage all your contractors up under what we use as AiDASH, and we started a pilot program this year. We love it. We're on board with it. But to be able to manage all the contractors and get them on the same page and not have to have your field personnel running around wasting time trying to check behind somebody else doing their job is a benefit. It saves you money. A little bit here, a little bit there winds up being a lot.
Thank you, OJ. Dragan?
Yeah, I mean, cost-wise, definitely the main topic, right, for us has been our tree trimming contractor costs. They've just ballooned out of control since COVID to present, right? Really, year after year, just significant increases. So that's obviously why we're here. We're doing the pilot. We just started it, got the results last month, analyzing it, and I think we need to control what we can, right? We can't control their rising costs. We can control what we do with that data. That's where I think the power of the AiDASH platform we're excited to see. And from what I've heard, it looks very promising. So that's a huge thing. And then actually, the transformer comment as well for overloaded transformers. We've started using distribution transformer monitoring devices to place on quite a few of our transformers and really see what is the actual loading, right? In real time, based on either 60-minute or even 1-minute granular data. And you can really see what is that frequency, how is it overloaded, do you really need to replace it? Because that's a significant cost. Obviously, there's a outage impact, and It's even helping us right-size transformers, right, to make sure for that project or future similar projects to make sure we have the right size of transformer when we're building the line the first time. So it's, yeah, every aspect of the costs has definitely changed, and the lead times have changed, so it's important to control what you can.
So thank you for that. And I think a lot of what the four of you have said really weaves into what I'll call the supply chain piece of this, right? And so transformers, the lead time, the costs. We talked about costs for the contractors that trim trees, et cetera, right? And so when you think about it, I always like to use this as an example. If somebody came to you and if you went to someone, a contractor, and said, build me a 3,000 square foot house, and they said, what kind of house you want? I want a big, beautiful, up to standard 3,000 square foot house. And they say, well, sign the line and I'll do it, and the cost to build that, they're trying to guess what you need, what you want, and all that, right? But when you go to them with a set of specs and say, I want this, I want that, then they can manage their cost risk, right? They know exactly what they want. They're going to price that. They're going to add whatever they add to it, and then you're going to get a better cost. I see that the same in utilities. It's been part of my experience as well. So when you have data around what needs to be done, if you're trimming trees, what needs to be trimmed and when, what type of equipment are you going to use? Is it a bucket truck? Is it a giraffe? Do you need climbing crews? The better you can estimate what you need and provide that to, out for bid, or to even if you sole source it, to be honest, you're just going to more likely get a better pricing on that. And I think, OJ, what you said around the T&E is because of that, right? You don't know, a lot of times you send contractors out and it's just like that build me the house, right? It's like, go go take care of that circuit for me. And if you don't have data in terms of what the current state is and what you're trying to achieve, you could really pay a premium because that contractor, then is just working towards what they think the expectation is. Very good discussion. Let's talk about future trends. So, OJ, you and I had a conversation, I think, out in the hall a little bit, and because of the amount of years you've had and your experience, I think you've seen a lot happen in the industry. I'd like to start with you on this one. So, what do you see? How would you describe the future trends in this business from a co-op perspective, where you were when you started your career, where you are now, and how has technology really played a part in that?
I'm excited about it. I'm one of the type of people that wasn't crazy about technology, but COVID changed that, being able to work with people and get the information you need. What we were talking about earlier when I started, whenever you get used to, everything was analog. You couldn't see anything. You had to go actually to a substation to download your data, to get a paper disc that had a pin mark on it to where you could see what your amp load was, what your voltage drop. You had mini max meters at the end of your line to see what your voltage fluctuations was. Now, you can do everything on a computer. You can switch lines in and out. You can get data off your breakers, off your station transformers. If you have a problem arise in a station, somebody 200 miles away knows what's going on and they can get somebody on it quickly. I made the comment, Star Trek don't have nothing on us. And that's just been a lot of what the technology see, the AI, heard about it 2 or 3 years ago, and here it is just changed exponentially. And I'm excited to see what it's going to bring in the future as far as helping our consumers and letting us do a better job at helping people. And that's what it's all about. That's the reason why we're in this room, is to help our neighbor, help our family, bring a quality of life that if you don't have electricity or water, you are a third world country.
That's a very good point. Dragan?
Yeah, technology has definitely changed, and the consumer has changed, right? The prosumer, they're a consumer and a producer, right? It's now the electric vehicle in the driveway with the Tesla Powerwall battery and the solar panels on the roof. That's going to be a typical residential home in shorter than we think. And how does that really impact our grid? How does it impact the technology that we need to use to manage all of that? Because right now, for generation for us, a solar panel, 10 kilowatt or less, we have a very clear plan, right? These are the things you have to follow, and you can install solar panels on your roof as a residential customer. Now, if you add the battery and bidirectional charging on your whether it's a Ford or whichever vehicle, there's all these options now. So it's really changing how we have to look at that customer and that home with the technology we have to use and what they're using. And then from a larger scale, again, with EVs, fleet electrification, right? It's happening. And when we actually have as of just a couple of weeks, so a 55-foot all-electric bucket truck, right? So we're shifting our fleet now basically at 10% of whether it's an EV or a hybrid, plug-in hybrid, that's going to change. So it's managing that load and having the technology to even manage the load at a specific location, whether it's on a feeder, right, or your station. So it's really interesting. And
yeah, I think there's a lot more coming on how we use technology to manage load. That's a good point. Yeah. We're getting close to time. You guys have anything else, Jacob? Anything to add to this part of it?
I'll just say one quick thing. You know, my opinion is technology is a freight train, and you got two options. You either get on board or you get run over. And so that's why we're all sitting in this room, right? Because we're on board. So I know I'm preaching to the choir on that one, but just think about that, you know, try to get everybody else in your organization thinking that way, and, you know, and try to make sure that you're not being closed-minded. Hey, I'm open to ideas when it comes to my area, but when it comes to someone else's area, I'm not open to ideas. So make sure you're open to all the ideas for technology and how it's impacting your organization.
Very good. Final thought?
And I said that we've gone from 1,400 to 1,000 kWh. Where do you find an appliance that's 400 kWh? It's an electric vehicle. But we'd be nuts to promote electric vehicles without the right education of when to charge, how to handle that capacity, and how to protect our grid. So I think that's the upcoming trend that we've got to embrace, because it gives us the revenue we're losing. We've just got to do it in the right way. So I think that's a big trend to watch.
These are all great points. I thought my final piece to add to that is, and you mentioned it, I think, OJ, earlier, one of you did, and that is when we look at the people we hire going forward, I think you're going to see the skill sets change a little bit, and the way that we manage that information that comes in. So I think that's all that we have time for today. Let's give our panel a hand.